Thank you, everyone. We'll be moving on to the North County Fire Authority.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. We're going to present to you the fire services budget, and I'm going to go probably fairly quick because that's kind of how I do it, and be happy to answer any questions along the way. Just stop us, or at the end we'll be happy to answer the questions. With us this evening, Elizabeth Solis in the audience supervises our support staff and works closely with Chief Lauderdale with our budget. Chief Lauderdale is in charge of our Support and Admin Services Bureau. And so we'll go ahead and get started. So the mission statement, to summarize the mission statement, I like to say it's preparing, executing, and taking care of people. Moving to the org chart. This org chart represents 3 cities and the collaboration of those within the 3 cities. It makes up the North County Fire Authority. It's divided up into 3 bureaus and 5 divisions. The bulk of the personnel are in the response portion of that, the fire companies, and the staffing of those right there. Our core services, obviously emergency response, fire and life safety code and compliance and investigations, community outreach and public education. Obviously, I'm not going to read each of those ones underneath. Organizational support, strategy, and maintenance of effort. That's pretty much the managing of the fire services. So support for citywide priorities, North County Fire Authority. Let me catch up with my fingers here. So under economic development and revenue enhancement, primarily what we do there is we're assisting with new businesses, expansion, and development within the city. And that's really kind of the core of what we do with the economic development. We take a lot of time wherever possible to meet prior to somebody wanting to do a project. And you talked about the streamlining of permits and all that. We're part of that as well. But we do like to spend time consulting with whether it's an improvement, a development, or new construction type of a project. We'll work with them and try and find alternative means to meet the fire code. Also, we as North County Fire, which we created 15 years ago, we're always looking for that opportunity to try and reduce costs, enhance service delivery, and come up with different ways to generate revenue. So we constantly look for that, but it's we've kind of captured the 3 cities locally, and there's interest here and there of other cities joining North County Fire Authority, but it comes and goes, and nobody really wants to do that unless they financially absolutely have to. So under public safety, really, this is about speed and weight of our ability to respond to emergencies. Speed, how quickly we get there, and the right number of people coming to deal with those emergencies, whether it's a medical emergency or some other type of emergency incident. And then continuing to public safety, completing the annual fire inspections. We're one of the only fire agencies, I think, in the whole Bay Area that annually conducts fire inspections for business, permitted occupancies, and multifamily. Most departments do it every 3 to 5 years, and we do it one time a year. Lots of training that gets done with our personnel, 2 to 3 hours a day, and then always we're ensuring operational readiness. So when we do get a response, we're able to respond quickly and have everything work properly. Under community and civic support, I'll just sum that up as saying that, it's taking care of the public and preparing for emergencies. Department accomplishments. One of the things we pride ourselves in, long ago when other agencies, I'd go to events and they'd talk about all the cool, neat things that they were able to fund and come up with. We sat down one day and said, you know what, we're just going to have to look at the fact that We do a really good job with what we have in responding to emergencies and non-emergencies, and our customer service responses indicate that each month and annually, and so we're very proud of the 98% overall customer service satisfactory rating. Another goal was getting a first due fire company, whether that's a paramedic or a first due company for a fire or other kind of emergency. We like to, our goal is 7 minutes or sooner, 90% of the time. That's from getting a dispatch of the incident and then arriving to that incident. As I said, our fire personnel, we accomplished 240 hours of training per fire, and our goal is about 220, but we ended up around 240. But that's doing 2 or 3 hours a day of training, and so we spend a lot of time training, being ready to go. I threw this chart in just so you kind of see the percentage of the types of incidents that we respond to. A lot of cities, 90% of what they're going to are medical emergencies. Yeah. We're at 65, almost 66%. But if you look at the fires, even though it says 2.4, if you have a few fires that are catastrophic, you still have a very low percentage of what you're responding to, but you have some really devastating fires. And our multifamily apartments that we have in this community are pre-1960 center hallway, no interior standpipes, no sprinkler systems, sometimes not even alarm systems, not sprinkled. So actually pretty surprising, and I think it has to do with some of the inspections that we conduct, that we don't have fire fatalities. It's been, I haven't had a fire fatality here since I've been the fire chief. There was one prior to me getting here in an apartment complex. So it's a goal for us. It's always been a goal for me to retrofit these apartments, but economically, there's always pushback to the costs associated with doing that kind of thing. The other one that's fairly large is service calls. So we just respond to anytime somebody calls, regardless of what it is, we respond. It could be a broken pipe for a single mother that in her house can't get the water turned off for her. We respond 24 hours a day. We do those things. Other accomplishments, we have to keep our paramedics and our EMTs. They have annual recertification. They have annual continuing ed and infrequent skills training that they have to complete. We were able over the last year, through lots of endeavors at different venues, of getting about 4,000 people or more trained in hands-only CPR. We also implemented into that was how to handle choking, and then also we're looking at stopping bleeding. So we kind of trained that same way. Today there was an event at Westmore High from 8 to 3 p.m. and we did about 350 students, taught them in those hands-only CPR and that. So we spent the whole day there along with AMR, the ambulance transport provider, and ourselves were there. It was, yeah.
And do you offer training? Do you offer training with respect to, those? What is that?
AEDs?
Yes.
Yes. And that's actually, we did that today as well. That was included in the training. We generally, when we're doing the hands-only CPR, we'll have a unit there, but a lot of times people in shopping malls where they don't take as much time to want to learn the AED part, and so we're not trying to teach them exactly, but let them know it's available, and it's pretty self-explanatory if you ever come in contact with one, but we primarily are dealing with hands-only CPR and how to deal with choking and that. But the AEDs are pretty, they're intimidating looking, but they really, you almost can't, you can't fail with it. I mean, it's not going to work unless they need it. You're not going to shock somebody unless they need it. So.
Do you know if we have those in our city buildings?
We do, and I'm not exactly sure all the locations, but there was a project done some years ago, but I'm not sure all the locations. I know in Recreation and I believe the Senior Center. Yeah.
Do we have one in this building?
I believe so, but right off the top of my head, I'm trying to think if it's right over near. Maybe I'm looking at something else. I don't know for sure. I have to look.
I'd like some training on that.
If you'd like some of that, we can do that pretty easily. Yeah. So just let us know.
And then under accomplishments, I know that you guys have been involved in some of the outside emergencies like the North fires and things like that.
Right.
Can you tell me more about those kind of involvements and more particularly how does that
How do we-
impact the budget? and
Yeah,
who pays for it?
absolutely. So the fire service is unique to all the other first responders. The California Fire Assistance Agreement, every year we sign an agreement. Well, actually, we provide them our costs associated with that agreement. And so any forest agency fires, U.S. Forest Service or state wildfires, when they call for our help, they reimburse us for the help. So it doesn't impact our budget. In fact, this last year, probably because they provide a 10% admin fee on the cost of the reimbursement, plus they pay us each day, is it $1,200 a day for a fire engine? We probably generate in excess of the salary and benefits that they reimburse us for. That's the overtime or backfilling. Maybe this last year, I think we generated about close to $100,000 in excess dollars.
So does that go to our general fund?
Comes back in.
I see.
And in our budget, you'll see it's a little bit on overtime. What happens is our overtime may be high, but when that reimbursement comes in, this year we are, for Daly City, we did about $1 million last year between all three cities. 350,000 is coming back to Daly City, but you'll see our overtime budget may be over by that number because we don't put the money back into that. We put it into revenues. So you'll see it in revenues in the budget, but no, it doesn't cost us to do that. Yeah. Let's see, I talked about the fire. Yes, sure.
On that same issue is, I think this is more for people at home, but when our firefighters go to a wildfire or some event like that, we still have a full staff here.
Yes, we backfill with
Right.
our reserve engines, and we fill back in. You know, anecdotally, just getting, one of the problems in California is we're not able to, we used to be able to probably generate about 2,000 fire engines in the state. We've dropped down to where we can only generate about 800 fire engines across the state. So one of the things that they've been talking about, and it makes it difficult, is what threshold do we reduce fire services when those major events are happening? Do we close 3 stations and then leave them closed because we have sent people to go? But there's not a system statewide to say, let's drop every agency by 25%, let's say, because we don't have enough fire resources. And if you listen to the North Bay fires, there wasn't enough. There's never going to be enough with some of those fires with 100-mile-an-hour winds and that. So, okay, let me go to the next one here. Just wanted to show you a little bit about the violations, percentage of violations. This is typical of most cities. Your residential, that's multifamily apartments, and then businesses. Those are the 2 biggest numbers that you have. All the other ones are pretty small, but just give you an idea of that when we're out there, we're doing the initial inspections and we're following up and doing, correcting the violations.
What kind of violations do you see in, like, say, residences?
In multifamily.
That's what it
Yeah,
is.
we don't do residential. We
Yeah.
do triplexes and above, and so most of the R, when you see R, it's multifamily. So it's more.
Like smoke detectors?
Yeah,
and stuff
and even then, we just randomly knock on doors to see if people have a smoke detector. We don't go inside apartments. We just do common areas of that. Businesses, that you're blocking exits, extension cords, those kinds of things. So our goals, once again, our goal is to get a first due fire company on scene in 7 minutes or less, 90% of the time. And then our customer service, we're maintained 98% or better. We're trying to get 220 hours, which we exceed usually around 240 hours per firefighter training annually. Complete all of our in-service and continuing education for the paramedics and emergency medical technicians. 98% for the inspections. And the reason that's not 100% because we do get to every address, but we have a number that one either won't let us get in or it's vacant property. We eventually get it, we just don't get it done within that year, let's say. And so we can't say 100%, but we basically are touching every building annually 100%. And then our goal is to do 1,000 or more with the training of the hands only, choking, bleeding, that kind of thing. And hopefully we can do more than that, but that's our goal. No significant changes to the budget. And then the actual budget summary. The only notable on the revenues, the reason you see it down is that we received a $580,000 grant. So there was more in 17, and now we're back to what our normal revenues would be, and that's $500,000 that we get reimbursed from North County Fire Authority. Do $500,000 there. We do $50,000 a fire company for paramedic first response, and then it's the other miscellaneous kinds of revenues that come in for doing the inspections, reimbursement for inspections and correction of violations and other anecdotal amounts there. Other than that, salary and benefits, like everybody said, it's up and fixed charges are up, but the rest of the budget is flat, the operating budget portion of it. And be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and also thank you for keeping us safe here. I do have a couple of questions on the department accomplishments.
Okay.
On the pie chart, I know that, is that reflective of Daly City only?
That percentage there?
Yeah, like, I mean, this whole kind of, yeah, pie chart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a snapshot, but it would be about the same for all three of the cities.
Okay.
I mean, it's probably within, if we were to combine them all, correct? Is this is just Daly City, or is this reflective of everything? Okay.
Okay, and so I think it would be helpful next time, I know it's the whole North County, but since, you know, we're looking at Daly City, it'd just be good to know the statistics
Sure.
in our jurisdiction.
We can
Although-
forward that to you.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be around the same, generally speaking, but we can forward that to you.
Okay, great. And then I got a question on around, like, how much overtime has our Daly City firefighters been? I mean, at this point, has there been?
So we haven't gone over in overtime.
Okay.
As a dollar. You know, there is injury leave right now that has been pretty systemic over the last few years. And then when you add that into the other leave times, they're working they're working a lot of shifts. But it's not exceeding, it's not a cost issue. It's just they're covering all the leave time that there is associated with that.
So, yeah, so it's more of like a staffing issue.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
if you're down 3 to 5, we've been down 3 to 5 firefighters just alone every month for most of the year. But then you throw in the leave time for vacation, comp time, sick leave, then you have days where it's exacerbated by how many people are off in a day. And so people get mandatory, meaning they get forced to work. If somebody isn't going to be there, then they can't leave. They're going to stay there unless they can find relief, and they can't find relief.
So that's where we're at
Yeah.
right now. Okay. Thank you. Vice Mayor.
I know this is probably a hard question to answer, but when are we gonna get to Engine 95 and getting back to that place? I mean, I know it's hard to answer that,
Well,
but it doesn't look like we've had much change, which is
Yeah.
good. I mean, relatively, but,
Right.
so I guess I just wanted to know your thoughts.
Well, so, you know, we reduced the fire department budget by $2.1 million last year. You're probably looking at that amount of money that you would need to restore the engine company that was reduced. I think you're years out in terms of, you know, having revenue to restore that fire company. I'm sure it's a goal for people, but it's, you know, obviously you're going to have to get through some other challenges, you know, moving forward. So I think you're, you know, like I say, it's a funding, you know, it's policy, it's lots of different things, but, you know, there's some duration in time, I'm thinking.
So to put it in perspective, though, in addition to that, council member, and Ron and his staff are aware of this, during the budget hearings where we did actually make cuts across almost all the departments, the fire department's theoretical contribution to the reductions that we needed in order to reduce the structural deficit that we're facing in this budget was $660,000. I didn't take those cuts from the fire department, recognizing that we did cut a fire company, and recognizing that if we tried to cut $660,000 out of this budget, we would be in serious trouble. And so we didn't. The police department did make a few more cuts. They didn't get to their full targeted amount the way most of the departments did. And some of the departments even exceeded it a little bit. But we recognize that that was a huge hit. And while we have been able to function, and thankfully we haven't had any unfortunate incidents as a result of cutting that engine company, I recognize that the fire department could not absorb that kind of a cut. So they were the department that was spared this time around from any more serious cuts. But as Ron mentioned, he pointed out, you know, we're talking about $2 million. We don't have $2 million. That would just continue to escalate that structural deficit. And so really the only thing that is going to move us back in the direction of where we were and restore that engine company is if the council at a future date wants to go back to the public to see if they will fund it. Because really we don't foresee that in the next...
You mean like a ballot?
Like a ballot measure like we had that didn't pass. But maybe if you waited a year or so and then did some public outreach and education and helped the public to better understand the implications of not having that engine company, and that the things that it does in providing the additional stress on the staff having to work extra hours, a lot of other things. If we'd had more time to educate the public about that, maybe they would have understood the issue better and would have been more willing to do that. But really...
But shouldn't we working on that now? I mean, if you're saying that's...
Well,
really
absolutely.
What the solution
If that's a direction that the council wants to move in, to have a year from now a ballot measure to do that, then yes, I would recommend that you start doing that now, because it's going to take a lot of time to reinforce for the public to really understand what has happened in the fire department as a result of that very significant cut. But it takes at least a year for a ballot measure to really be able to meet everyone in the community, get the business community supported, understand why these things are needed, and to hopefully then have a positive outcome. But barring going to the public, there isn't going to be a time that we can foresee in the next 5 years where we're going to have an extra $2 million to add to the budget on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and I just add, just to, be clear about, I've never told you that it's, that the loss of the fire company was going to have catastrophic. It's you don't know when that's going to occur. It's capacity. It's, fortunately now every station has a fire company in it. If we went to the next level of cuts, we're going to have to close a fire station. There'll be one district with nothing in it. But it's capacity. So it's on when we look at all during the weeks, we are a structure fire and a medical away from nothing in the city. Now we move things in and all that. It's just capacity. We just don't have what we had before. And as our, fortunately our call volume is probably going up 3% or more annually. But we're maintaining, and we have a 7-mile city, so we're able to do things. But we just don't have, if we run to an apartment fire, not having all those to get there right now, that's the kind of capacity issue that we're talking about. Doesn't mean that we won't be successful, and we believe that we'll probably always rescue people. We just will have much more property damage. We have to choose one or the other. Rescue and not conserve the property. And so that's where we're at. So adding back, as Pat says, if we could get the public to understand that there's a need for that capacity and that resource, because that's also inspections, also public education, that's also lots of elements that go into that one fire company besides just emergency response. So we would be supportive of that too.
Yeah, if we do want to go at some time in the future for a ballot measure, a lot of work needs to be done, because in this most recent one, not a single precinct in all of Daly City voted to support it. Not one, not even the precinct where the fire station is.
Yeah.
So there
Right.
was a big gap between
Right.
either understanding or the willingness for everybody, other places to pay to bring that company. It's hard to know what the reason was,
Right.
but there was a huge gap between support. And
Right.
so we'd have a huge job.
And the
to
difficulty is
education.
that staff is limited in how I,
yeah,
as a
you
fire
guys
chief,
can't do it.
can promote this kind of thing. Elected officials
Yeah, we can do it.
have to do it and be
Yeah.
supportive. I mean, if you have that, then you have maybe a good chance of something coming through on that, so.
Staff can educate. We can go out and educate what we're able to do with the budget we have and the engine companies we have and what happens when we can't. And so we can provide pure public education about it. But in terms of telling people, vote for this, we can't do that.
And it's a fine line when you're trying to explain to them
Yeah.
between, if you don't do it, here's what's, so anyway, it's
Right.
tenuous type of a thing, but,
Advocacy versus
right. And it's-
explanation
some
and
may view it as
education.
being more of the alternative, and then we get accused of that. So if I go out there and I think I'm trying to scare everybody, that, so we just have to be careful about that from staff's perspective on that, so.
Councilmember Sylvester?
I have a few, if I may. First of all, if any council member do take that AED training, just remember, if you're using it on me, pull the plug. Because it don't fit, so you gotta pull the plug. All right. I'm concerned, deeply concerned, and of course, public safety is number one and foremost for me. I'm concerned about the firefighters in the sense that they should have 4 in each truck. They ride around with 3 in
out,
each
yeah.
truck,
We used to have that.
which leads to additional stress when they arrive at calls. Not counting time off, as you mentioned, Chief, disability concerns. Folks are off on disability. You subsequently bring about mandatory overtime that they'll have to work. And I think it's not good for our staff. Now, I'm just making this comment. It's not good for our staff. What I didn't see here is North County Fire Authority. We handle calls in Daly City, Pacifica, and Brisbane. What I don't see is that those cities paying their fair share for calls. So basically, how many calls to Pacifica, how many calls in Daly City, as opposed to how many calls in Brisbane? I want to make sure that they're paying their share, and I don't see that here. In regards to the ballot measure, I feel we went too quick on that ballot measure. Basically, we need to accommodate all and bring about full transparency to everyone here in Daly City. That includes the seniors who are on fixed income. If I was a senior on fixed, well, I am a senior, but if I was on fixed income, low fixed income, I probably would have voted against it as well. So if there is some sort of mechanism where they can be accommodated, I think that that's very important. Well, if you can show that your income is, say, poverty level, you don't have to pay. But that's to be worked on. My final thought is, and Chief, I heard you made mention, whether you're going to take property over life. And at this present time, if it takes a little bit longer and property may burn down, that same amount of time could affect the life of somebody, those extra seconds or minute. So my final thought on this is, I feel we don't have enough firefighters. and I think we need some more. I see your staffing recommendations to increase by 1. I don't think that that's going to do it. You don't gamble with public safety, whether it's police or fire. And one last question I need to ask, why is it that every time it rains, I hear more fire trucks? I would think.
Because they crash a lot. There's a lot of traffic.
Yeah, every time it rains, I see fire trucks. I just wonder if it's a particular type of fire or something, but.
So on your
comments.
on your first comment, just to give some perspective, and if I can sit down with you at some point if you'd like, explain. Everyone does pay their fair share. North County Fire Authority, we do the cost allocation. They pick up the cost appropriately for all the overhead in this. So they are paying their fair share. In San Mateo County, because of the pre-hospital care and the JPA that exists, everybody moves and covers. That's how we get paid $50,000 a fire company to make sure that we all arrive in every community. So we literally have a boundary drop. There is no jurisdictional boundaries anymore in San Mateo County. One dispatch center, and we respond into everybody's jurisdiction. And we extend that into fire response. I will tell you that Station 81 in Brisbane does a lot in covering Station 93, when 93 moves over here to cover because we get busy. Vice versa, Station 71 and 72 from Pacifica move over here when we get busy. And if you look at firedispatch.com on a Saturday night, you'll see that we sometimes have 4 out of our 5 companies committed on medical emergencies, and we're moving those slower. We'll call them slower. They're fairly busy, but they move over here. We then go over there to help them. So really, from a cost-effective standpoint, we basically have one county fire department for major emergencies and for dealing with medical emergencies in this county. So they are, and that's how we generate that $500,000 that you'll see in the budget that comes back to the city of Daly City. Is that's the fair share of those other cities paying for the overhead piece of that, of running their city's fire department. So we run 3 cities and get reimbursed for doing that through the cost allocation model.
Thanks, Chief. Well, I'm
Sure.
on the OES committee, and we got a budget coming up, and I seem to recall that Daly City has to pay a certain amount of money due to its population.
That's correct.
And, and most of these committees I do sit on, I just feel Daly City's getting the bad end of the stick. And I think something needs to be done. Just because we have more people than any other city in San Mateo, something needs to be done. Okay, I'm on camera. For instance, mosquito abatement. Everybody in Daly City who owns property has to pay a certain fee to be part, but not many people in Daly City utilize the services, but you're paying for it out of your taxes. Whereas other counties, they use it more than we do. So, we need to come to a happy medium and full and complete transparency for our citizens throughout, and of course the representatives on the committees is very, very important. So I just wanted to bring that.
So the good news is the San Mateo County Emergency Services budget you're referring to that
Yes.
you'll see, there's no increase this year, so it's flat.
Well, yeah, that helps a lot.
So we're not going to pay any more this year.
That's good.
$100,000 is a lot of money.
So.
We're making up for it in animal control.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions or comments? I think what you reiterated earlier, Councilmember Sylvester, around how, in essence, around staffing and if anything, there could be 4, but now with a lot of just a situational, just having a lot of them be on overtime. I think that also is concerning to me. Around these are our staff and the people on the front lines, and so. I know it's not necessarily a budgetary issue, but I think, around our personnel and ensuring that they're not overworked. So.
Well, to the extent that adding staff is something that the council would like to do, it is a budgetary issue.
Right.
And so what I would suggest to you is not something that we can solve in this budget at all. But you might want to consider going forward as you begin over the next several months to consider a ballot measure in the coming years. You might want to consider broadening that ballot measure to not just be to restore an engine company, but to restore an engine company and enhance staffing. And if the public is willing to support that, that would be the mechanism on an ongoing basis to support the addition of a fourth person on each of the vehicles. It's going to be a huge amount, which is why very few places have four-man crews, but it's not because cities don't want four-man crews, and not because we don't think that would be the optimal, but they can't afford them. And that's why most cities operate the way that we do. But if that's something that the council would like to do, then you certainly could pose that question to the public as to whether or not they would be willing to fund it on an ongoing basis. And that would replace just, restoring Engine 95.
Yeah, I have a question. So when a three-person crew shows up at a fire, do they have to wait for another engine to come because of the two in, two out rule?
Right, so if you're gonna, unless there's a known rescue,
Like a person screaming out of a window?
or because based on what you see
Yeah,
appearing, driveway cars, kids' toys, all, and you believe somebody's in there, we can go in to that environment without four people being present. If not, we wait for the second due engine to arrive,
Okay.
and then we have four people available. Doesn't mean that we can't attack that fire
right.
and knock the fire down from the outside. And actually, that's a tactic that is being employed when I started 30-some years ago. That's how we fought fire. We knocked it down first, and then we went in after it. And then years later, we quit doing that. We started going inside first and trying to push it out. They're finding now that by knocking the fire down quickly from the exterior and then going in,
Well, that
you
might
actually
be
make it
safer.
more tenable for people that are inside. But you're correct. There is an OSHA standard law that requires us to have four people at scene before we go inside. But there's the variance to that is if you have a known rescue or you perceive there to be a rescue necessary in there. Just because people aren't screaming, if someone says there's somebody inside there, we're going in.
So, so the two in, two out is structure related?
Yes.
And whoever gets there first goes in if there's people?
Right.
Involved
And so
to
the
save
two in, the
lives.
theory is two
Okay.
go in and two are at the door in case those two get trapped.
Right.
They can go in and get them. Now, we also send another company that becomes just a rescue
Right.
company for firefighters that's standing by.
Right.
So that's an additional company that comes in. But in the initial attack of a fire, that's what happens. And so, more times than not, if we think that we're going inside for a rescue, whether we got four people there or not, the presumption, and we try not to abuse that, but that's up to the company officer to make that decision, or the incident commander that's there at the time. Usually the company officer is the incident commander till the battalion chief gets there, and then he's the incident commander, or she, and then it ends up, we go after it, so.
And each fire's individual, so you don't really.
Yeah, you got to evaluate each one, what you're doing. And we certainly take great effort to not risk our firefighters. I mean, as a chief, I have made it very clear that we are going to not risk, for the wrong reason, firefighters for something that's just a commercial building, that there's no rescue there. We're going to make sure that we don't hurt people. And we put the fire out, but we don't jeopardize our personnel. So,
Good.
but
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
And look at that, it's not even close to midnight.
Thankfully.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you very much for your presentation.